Hey guys, we're going to be working on the sign up screen today, and I have the iOS emulator up and running, and we have a little bit of an error, and that's because we left sign up and login blank. So we're going to fill those in and then start working on our sign up page. So before I begin though, I want to go over one quick important thing that I forgot to mention in the last video. So I'm going to be using an iOS emulator, and that has access to localhost on my computer. So I can just tell in my code the link to the server is localhost 4000. But if you're using an Android emulator, it might not have access to localhost on your computer, and that's where your server is, and it needs to connect to it. So what you can do is there's a Stack Overflow, which I'll put in the description below. Check this out. There's a few suggestions on what you can put instead of localhost. You might have to use this number or this number. And try giving those a try instead of localhost here if you have a problem connecting to the server, which is what we're going to do later in this video with when we do a mutation. Alright, with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing is I'm just going to create a dummy little hello here. That way we can get our error to go away. So I'm going to say text from React Native, and I'm just going to export default, and we're just going to say hello. Hello. And we're going to copy that and paste it into login. And we should, I don't know if you guys saw that warning over here. That warning is gone, no errors, and it says hello here. And I'm just going to say sign up to make sure we are indeed on the sign up page. And it says sign up, so we are. Cool. So this is where we're going to create a form. And the form is going to have 3 fields. If we check out our schema.graphql, we're going to be calling this sign up mutation. To call it, what we need is an email, password, and name. So we need to create those 3 fields and collect that data from the user. Now, normally if I was using forms, I would use something like Formic. I really like this, and it just helps you make forms faster. But since we're using React Native, Formic doesn't help you all too much. Some of the things you can't use. So we're going to go ahead and build just our form from scratch, and but we're going to do it in a Formic-esque way. But we may end up using this later if we end up making some more complex forms. Alright, so in here I'm going to use a class. So we're going to say our signup component extends react.component, and we're going to have a render function in here, and we're just going to return. And we're going to have a view, and inside of this view we're going to have, we could have another view, and I want this view to take up the whole page. So I'm going to say flex1, and I'm going to tell it to display flex, and what I want is to have the text input centered here. So what I'm going to do is show you guys what this looks like. So I'm going to have a text input here, and nice, it just imported it from React Native. And I could have a placeholder, and one of the things I want to say is name. And by the way, we are going to be adding state to keep track of our form. We're going to have a values and an errors, and we're going to have is submitting. Is submitting, and we're going to keep track of whether we're currently submitting anything. That way we don't submit twice, but we'll go more over that later. Okay, let's just see what this looks like. We're currently not importing view, so let's make sure we do that. Okay, so right now we don't see anything. Well, we see the name at the top right here. And we don't want name at the top right. We'd like to have name in the middle. It's super faint. I don't know if you can see it. So I'm going to say justify content center. And now we have this guy in the middle here. Perfect. So he's really hard to see, and for whatever reason the default doesn't have a border or anything. So we're going to style this guy, and we're going to have a couple text inputs. So I'm just going to create an object up here called field style, which is going to have the styling for a field. And actually I forgot, in React Native you should create style sheets, not these const objects that we use up here. So actually we can put it up here. So const styles is equal to style sheet dot create, and this is going to be a field. So for a field, the styling that we want is a border, so a bottom border. So bottom border width, and I'm going to set it to 1 pixel. Let's say the font size is 20 pixels, so we make it a little bit bigger because it's really small right now. And let's just see what this looks like. So I'm going to say style, and I'm going to say styles.field. Bottom border, border bottom width is what I'm supposed to say. I just did this backwards. Border bottom width. There we go. And cool. So now we have this black bar at the bottom, but he's kind of fat. So what I want to do is in our view here, set the width. So I don't know, maybe a width of 200 pixels. Alright, nice. And I don't want him up against the left. I'd like him centered. So to center him that direction, I'm going to say align items center. Alright, cool. So name is in the middle now, and I want a couple more fields, right? So I want a email, and I also want a password. And that bar looks a little funny. I don't know why that's going on, or what's going on there. And then at the very bottom, I would like a button. So we can import button from React Native. And I forget how this works. I don't know if I just say hello here, or if there's a prop for it. Alright, so the title prop of button must be a string. Okay, cool. So you don't just say what the text is, you say title, and it's going to be create account, we'll say. Alright, nice. The prop on press is marked as required, so let's add that. So on press, this is where we're going to submit, so I'm just going to create a this dot submit. So submit. So now whenever our button is called or pressed, it's going to call this function. And these guys are a little squished together. Let's add some margin bottom, maybe like, I don't know, 15. That's better. This guy is I think to get rid of the weird borders, they look a little funny on each one. I think I just have to set a height, maybe a height of 30. That looks better. These look good. This one looks a little weird still. I don't know if it's because of my height. I don't know why this kid looks different than all the rest of them, but it looks decent right now. I don't know, I guess you could add a background color for this create account. I guess that's the default button in iOS, not sure. He looks a little weird though, but we'll leave him for now. Let's get started on the functionality of our form. So values up here, we're gonna have some default values. So name is going to be name, of course, username, empty, password. And then over here we're gonna set the value, and we're gonna set the value to what is the state value. So I'm just going to destructure it here. So const values is equal to name, username, and password, and we're getting this from the state. So then value is going to be a name, the value here is going to be username, and the value here is going to be password. And then we also want to do a on I think it's text change text. We want to implement this function, and we're going to create a function that handles. So on change text, and we need to pass in the string or the key, and the value. So the key is going to be the name of the field we change, and the value is the new value. And then with that, we're going to set state, and with set state, you can pass a function in, so that's what I'm going to do. And the function is the current state, and then you return a new state. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want to keep the new values, or the values we already have. So I'm going to do dot state, and then I'm going to create a new key with value. Alright, let's save that. We did a lot of stuff. Let's make sure all this stuff works. So I'm going to explain how onChange works in a second. I just want to make sure we get this working. So we're going to call this .onChange text. So text, and here we're going to pass in the name of the field we want to update, which is name, and then the new text, which is that. And we're going to do that for each one. So we can copy what we have there. Oops. Okay. And then for each one, we just want to change the name. So now this is going to be the field username, and this is going to be the name password. All right, let's make sure this renders. Okay, so what is happening? Why did I do it this way? So we have this function called this.onChangeText, and what it does is it takes the text. So this function right here just returns the new text as you're typing. So we're going to take that text and we're going to pass it to this function. And we also pass it a label of which field we want to change. So this is the new text for the password field. So we take that up here, and what we want to do is we want to insert that new value into our state. So to do that, we want to keep what our current state is, so at least with values. So you notice how I did .state. So this retain, we're going to do state.values here. So this will keep all the values that we had before, and then we're adding a new value to that, and then key. Now I don't want this to be called key, right? We don't want that. So the brackets here gets the value. So if this is password, it's the same as me saying password value. These are equivalent if the value of key is password. So now that's how I know I want to set the password to the new value. But now if we should type, we should be able to see text appear. Good. There's a small problem though, because our password is viewable. So to get rid of that, there's a property called secure text entry, and now we should no longer be able to see the password. Perfect. Or at least, it's doing the ... thing, and we can just see the last character we type. Okay, so now we want to actually create an account when this button is pressed. And it's actually quite easy because we have all our fields and values. So now we just need to call our mutation inside of submit. So how do we call a GraphQL mutation from React Native? Well, the way we do it is we first need to import. Oops, I don't want this. And what are we going to import here? We want to import Apollo client, and well, we don't want to import Apollo client. Actually, I need to check my package.json. Did we install? Okay, we installed React Apollo. Never mind. I didn't know if I would need to get it from this guy, which has all the packages, or if we did install React Apollo. So from React Apollo, there's something called GraphQL. So React Apollo, and this is a higher order function. So we want to call it on our signup class. So export default GraphQL signup. And here's where you specify where you would like or what mutation. So I'm basically injecting my class here with a prop so that I can call a mutation. This will look a little confusing, but it'll make sense when we do it. So GraphQL tag. So we're going to import this library, or this thing called GQL from GraphQL tag. This is where we specify the mutation where we want to run. So here we're going to say const signup, mutation is equal to GQL, and then we're going to put the sign up stuff right here. And then you pass in your mutation here. So when you do that, you now have access to this. You can call that mutation. So that's what we're going to do in our submit. So what the heck do we put here? Well, what mutation do we want to call? If we look at this guy, we want to call the sign up mutation. So we need to write the GraphQL to do the mutation. So what I like to do is just go on over to graphical and type it. So for me, it's at localhost 4000, and I hope I'm not blocked. Doesn't look like I'm blocked. That's good. Do I have a header? Nope. I guess we just don't have authentication on right now, so that's nice. Or maybe there's not authentication for this server by default. Okay, so I want to do a sign up mutation, so I'm going to say mutation. We're going to have some variables here. Name, which is a string, and then what else is there? Username, which is also a string, and a password, which is a string. And I don't know why this is all red here. Oh, I meant to put a $sign. There we go. So this is how you do variables in GraphQL. And then we're going to use these variables in a sign up mutation. So name is equal to name. Username. Oh, right. This is supposed to be email, not username. Email is email. And then our password. And then we have a auth payload, which we can grab a token and a user. We don't really need to display anything for the user, so I'm going to just ignore that and grab stuff from the token. And the token is just a string, which is really all we care about. So I'm going to copy that. So this is what we want from the response, a token. So we're going to paste that here. And I have no idea why. Unexpected tab character, no tabs. Yeah, not sure. I guess I have a tab here it doesn't like. Okay. Oh, it looks like we have an error. I think it's because I need to import it like this. Is that right? Yeah, cool. So now we want to call this mutation here, passing in the name, email, and password variables. So to do that, we're going to do it in our submit function, which is called when we press this button. And we're just going to say this.props.mutate. And I'm going to make this an asynchronous function because mutate is asynchronous. So I'm going to say response is equal to await of this.props.mutate. And then I'm just going to console.log response. So we can see what we get back from this. And I'm awaiting it because it's an asynchronous function. And here I'm going to say variables. And what are the variables we want to pass in? These guys, which is this.state.values. Alright, let's give that a save. Stuff is red. It just doesn't like the order. So this is just an ESLint thing. And this is red here because we're not using these two, so we need to use those. Ideally we use is submitting in our submit function. So at the start of a submit we should say this.setState is submitting is true. And then at the very end we'll say is submitting is false. And the reason we guard the function like this is to make sure we don't submit multiple times. And to prevent that, actually we can just do it at the very top. We can say if this.state.is submitting, you can just return. So we don't want to do something if we're already submitting. We need to wait and make sure is submitting is false. So we set it to true so we make sure no one else does anything, or at least the button's not double clicked. And we're calling the response, so I think we're good to go. Let's try this out. And I forgot to mention you should have your server up and running, but if you got this far, you probably got that. And to start it up, you're going to need to run npm start here in my e-commerce folder. And also make sure you have a Prisma server set up as well, which I think if you run Prisma local start, that'll start it up. Okay, so here's my app and here's the log for the app. So when we console log response, we should see it over here. So my name is going to be Bob, and we're going to say bob@bob.com, and Bob, create account. Response not successful. Receive status code 400. Okay, so what I need to do is wrap this with a try catch. So, and we're going to console.log the error. So now we will see, and let's say let response, and we're just going to say response is null by default. Okay. So now we can actually see what the error occurs. Hopefully it gives us better than just network error not successful. And I wonder if on our end over here, required type string was provided. Variable email of required type string was not provided. So it looks like we have, okay, so we did not pass the variable email here. So what I'm also going to do is, oh, look at me. I did name and username, even though I meant to say email. Okay. I just, in my head, I replaced username with email for some reason multiple times. Sorry for the confusion, guys. Email. So let's fix that right here. This should be email. You guys probably were watching and wondering why I was using username all over the place, and we're probably super confused. Alright, but that'll fix it. We just need to change that field to email. Alright, let's try this again. Bob@bob.com, Bob. Great. Now we're not clearing the field, so nothing happens there. But wow, look at our response. We have a token, a JWT token. So it did indeed work. So we were able to create a form and submit to our server. Now, there's plenty of stuff to do now with this response. We're not handling errors. What happens if Bob already exists? We also need to clear the form, go to the next screen, but at least we got a form set up. We're able to receive a token. So that's where I'm going to leave this video. What we'll do next is what I just mentioned, and a couple other things. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.